I've helped one investor cash out from a purchase they made last year, and in the span of a year, they've made $110,000. From an affordability perspective, it's fair to say that Oshawa is still the most affordable when it comes to the Durham region, and perhaps when compared to the rest of the GTA, I would say it's probably in line with one or two other areas.
What is up, YouTube? Matt McKeever here, and we're back talking about the Oshawa real estate market with Saman. Hey, how's it going?
Hey, Matt. Nice to be back.
So I'm sure the audience is curious. It's been such a hot, I don't know, it feels like forever at this point in time, but certainly a hot summer in general for real estate investing. Before we jump into the presentation you've put together for us, what's going on in your corner of the world?
Yeah, no, definitely exactly what you said. The market is hot. Everyone's active. Clients are still active. Clients are still optimistic about the market. Working with a lot of investors, the strategy is still the same. Let's try and find a good lot in a good location. It's okay to pay a premium because when we look at the market fundamentals and the strategy, from a strategy perspective, we're still getting positive cash flow with contingencies in there. And there's actually indicators in the market showing that there's going to be an increase in value. So, there's a lot of buzz around the garden suites, which we're going to talk about. So a lot of these factors still keep investors engaged and wanting to, keep pushing forward and keep getting properties and getting them under contract.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to diving into the numbers. And I know we'll be talking about the month of August today, but we're shooting this obviously in September. What are you seeing going on right now in the September market? I know a lot of other realtors I was talking to, it sounds like for them in their local markets, it's a lot of investors that maybe took it easy over the summer, or maybe like they kind of enjoyed their summer a little bit. They seem to be coming back, starting to see a lot of aggressive offers again. Is that similar in Oshawa, or?
Yeah, I would say, in the last month or so, I've helped one investor cash out from a purchase they made last year, and in the span of a year, they've made $110,000. I'm seeing helping some investors pick up property. So as mentioned earlier, people are still active, still shopping around. But in September, there's more inventory coming to market. I'm finding that the summer break towards the end of August is clearly done. People are requesting to go back out to showings. Getting a lot of requests from these videos to jump on calls, and people are excited, and they've met with their mortgage broker already and ready to take the next steps in terms of seeing properties. So I'd say definitely more inventory is coming. The type of properties that we're interested in, the bungalows, are coming. Surprisingly enough, and I don't have an answer to why, but I'm seeing a lot more estate sales hitting the MLS. I don't think I have a clear answer as to why, but it's comfortable for me to say that every day I see 2 or 3 properties with sellers and an estate. So again, not sure why, but just seeing it now. But besides that, like,
for anyone that's maybe new to the idea, do you mind kind of breaking down what an estate sale is, as well as, is there any sort of different approach you take when it is an estate sale?
Yeah, there definitely is. So an estate sale, could be one of few things. It could be that a family who's owned the property is no longer alive, and the property belongs to the estate, and the estate is making a decision to sell the property. There's that. I've seen power of sales also happening, where perhaps the homeowner is behind on mortgages and the property has now been repossessioned by the bank, and those are coming to market as well. I think, when I talk to people, a lot of people always tell me, well, do you have access to foreclosed properties or estate sale properties? And the answer is, unlike the US, there's no magical platform where these, appear on a platform for us to search. They all naturally come to the MLS. The challenge that we often see more so with the repossession properties that the banks sell is that oftentimes they're not in a great livable environment. So financing may be quite difficult to obtain. There was an example, I can give an example. Last week, there was a property that was being sold by one of the banks. There was no access to the property, so you couldn't see the property in person. You just had to go off pictures, and there's actually no pictures of the interior either. So you either walk the perimeter of the house or just be ready to purchase it cash. So those are some of the difficulties that those present on the estate sale. I say it's fairly straightforward, similar to any other residential transaction where you have the time and the capability to go inside, take a look at it, and make a judgment call on whether you'd like to proceed. The one thing that I found is that oftentimes once the sale goes through, the period that the sellers have to make a decision is often longer. So oftentimes these contracts are being reviewed by lawyers, which they're asking for a 5 to 7 day irrevocable period, which means you submit an offer today, you don't have an answer for 5 to 7 days, which means perhaps in that middle, if an opportunity comes up, you may not be able to jump on it because you may be obligated to fulfill your duties with the contract that you've submitted.
Yeah, really appreciate you sharing that perspective, because I know for a lot of new investors, it sounds interesting, but sometimes also a little intimidating.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I know you've got a presentation put together for us. Let's jump into it.
Yeah, let's do it. Excellent. So just wanted to highlight what we're going to be talking today. So I wanted to speak about the Oshawa market and then kind of transition into the Durham region and take a look at what the numbers look like in the Durham region. Take a look at some September numbers. I've pulled exactly what is sold to date in Oshawa, and we'll kind of see where the prices are hovering around. Just wanted to quickly talk about navigating through offers and what that presents and how you can prepare yourself from a mindset perspective and also from a financing perspective. Garden Suites, there's been some comment and some noise about Garden Suites in the Clarington area, which is just east of Oshawa. So I think it's good for investors and potential investors to be aware of, because you can perhaps expand your horizon and your area of comfort as to where you like to invest. And we'll quickly take a look at a Pickering development that's coming up, which is quite exciting.
Awesome.
So if we jump right into the numbers and we take a look at the month of August, there was a bit more inventory. As you can see, new listings were up slightly from the month before and from June at 354 new listings, and sales were slightly up as well, 315. Still fairly low if you take a look at the months of May, June, but then prices were slightly lower. So I know when we did the last video, based on the sales that I saw at the point where we did the video, I was expecting the sale number, the average price, to be around 800K, but it's slightly lower. But if we look at it from a month over month, it's only 1% down. So what this tells me, Matt, is that the area is still in high demand and people are still interested in coming to the market, into the Durham region. And I would say that, I also made another prediction in the last video, not a prediction, but a statement saying that if you're looking to purchase, this is the time to purchase. And of course, in the comment section, I got killed. And, some people said, of course, a realtor is telling you to buy it now. But hey, look, if you had made a purchase, you perhaps, based on what the numbers are showing, you would have seen a bit of a correction and maybe you could have gotten a deal. But based on what I'm seeing now is that the market is still healthy. So, taking the advice of a realtor and going with what the market is showing you in terms of the data, I believe that if you're still in the market, you should be making the purchase sooner than later, because as we look at some of the other data that I'm going to show, it's showing that the market will be on an uprise. If we kind of take a look at the Durham region in general, and kind of look at the different surroundings that we have, we have a list of all the different areas that are within the Durham region, and you can still see that Oshawa is by far the cheapest when it's compared to some of our surrounding areas, such as Whitby, Ajax, Brock, and Uxbridge. This is really important for people to really understand, because when I get calls from people, oftentimes people want to bring their focus to Pickering, Ajax, Whitby, and not necessarily make the jump over to Oshawa. But from an affordability perspective, it's fair to say that Oshawa is still the most affordable when it comes to the Durham region, and perhaps when compared to the rest of the GTA, I would say it's probably in line with one or two other areas. I guess, the one thing that I always tell people is that the advantage that Oshawa has compared to some of the other areas in the GTA is that it's still along the 401 corridor, and you still have access to the GO train in the event that you do have to commute downtown. And one of the metrics that we always talk about is still price to list price. So essentially seeing, if properties are going over asking price or under asking price. And here the average sale to list price ratio is 112% in the Durham region and 114% in Oshawa. So it's fair to assume, and if you're a consumer or an end user looking to buy your property and you see properties that are listed on the MLS, it's safe to assume that you're going to have to pay 112 to 114% over asking price. And the notion is that asking price doesn't really mean anything these days. It's just a figure to bring you in. But it would be a fair guideline to use when you're looking at properties and wondering what it's worth. Year over year price, 26% increase. The reason why I brought this on, Matt, and I was going to share a personal story. So last year in August, I decided to sell my first duplex conversion that I had completed. And essentially the reason why I did that was because in August 2020, Oshawa was at an all-time high. And even myself was of the notion that there's no way this is getting any higher. So I decided to sell a property that I had purchased. So I had purchased this property in the Lakeview neighborhood, which if people have watched some of the previous videos, they'll know that I've classified Lakeview as a C-type neighborhood, but I'm extremely bullish on it. So I purchased this property for $405 in December of 2019, closed on it January of 2020. This is what it looked like, put some rough pictures that I pulled off the MLS. We went through the process and kind of turned it into a nice picture.
That looks beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. It took some time, 4 or 5 months to do this, and market was bumping last year this time, and I decided to sell it. And there's me as a seller, and I sold it for $652. And here I'm thinking, oh my God, I've made a ton of money now. I'm gonna wait for a correction, and this is a realtor speaking, 12 months ago, and I'm gonna jump back into the market. And sure enough, I say that one of the biggest mistakes I've made in my career is selling this property. So if you look at 544 Adelaide Avenue, 3+3, same type of property. This one has a garage, mine didn't, but I had a much larger lot, and this one sold for $850. So the lesson learned, and I know you speak about it a lot in your videos and on your channel, is that oftentimes people don't understand the concept of refinancing a property. So if you're ever in a situation where you perhaps think that market's super high and you want to cash out, just really understand or learn to understand that there is the option of refinancing a property where you can pull some money out and have access to the capital without actually selling your property.
Yeah. Really appreciate you sharing that with the audience, because, sometimes the theoretical doesn't hit home the same way as an anecdotal story does, right? Like, hey, this is actually what I've gone through and experienced as a real estate investor. And before we move on from this property and project, again, it looks like you did, or you or your contractor did amazing work on the property. And I'm sure some of the audience at home might even be wondering, if they're looking to buy in Oshawa, if they're looking to execute on a similar business model, if they're working with you, do you have a network that they can plug into in order to find great contractors that do that sort of quality of work?
Yeah, absolutely. This project, and actually all the projects that I'm involved in personally, I'm quote unquote general contracting it myself, just so I can have a bit more control over the decision making and also the cost factor. But to answer your question, yes, there's definitely a network of teams that I have access to when it comes to contractors, electrician, plumbers, and essentially, I provide that service to all my clients that work with me. Essentially the deal is you work with me, I help you find a property that meets the criteria to do the conversion. And once we purchase the property, you have access to everyone that I have access to. And these are people that I've done work with in the past. These are people that the city has also seen their work and inspected their work. They're aware of what the criteria are. So yes, and I would say a lot of people are scared of that factor of getting into the construction side of things. But rest assured that it's not our first time doing it. It's down to it's down to science, and the blueprint is easy to duplicate. And yes, you will have access to anyone and everyone that I've used in the past.
Awesome.
Cool. Yeah. And I mean, hey, Matt, like, I think the point to make here is that I could have probably refinanced this project and and have completed a perfect BRRRR. And a year later, I probably could have pulled out another 100, 120K. So not a bright move on my end, but hey, sometimes you got to share your losses, right?
Yeah, no, and I really do appreciate you sharing it with the audience, because again, it is a great example to be able to learn from other people's lessons.
Yes. Okay, so where are we at as of September? So as of right now, so I did a poll for Oshawa, and what I did was summarize everything that's sold to date. 154 properties have sold to date. These are all detached. These are all freehold properties in Oshawa. So the average price right now is $829, which is a bit higher. Typically, this number tends to dip towards the end of the month, but hey, I've made the prediction. Let's see what September looks like when the data comes out.
Yeah, and I appreciate you being willing to even have these conversations, right? Because a lot of people are scared to get it slightly wrong or be off. And again, it's so valuable, like even for myself. Like I often love holding myself accountable with my projections. And if you don't put it out there, it's hard to it's really easy to rewrite your memory, right? And be like, oh no, I totally thought it was this other way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, appreciate that. Yeah, so navigating through offers, I think I'm hoping that this is valuable for a lot of people who are in the market and competing with other offers, whether you're doing it on market or off market. But typically what I'm noticing right now is that firm offers are preferred. So what that means is that no financing, no inspection, or any other clauses that you would typically have in a purchase and sale agreement. Large deposits, I'm finding that, if you typically have a minimum 5% deposit, shows your seriousness and the ability, or, your will to fulfill the commitment and not walk away from the agreement. And oftentimes I've noticed that agents are asking for deposit in hand. So in the event that your offer is accepted, some agents are saying, well, hey, if you have the deposit in hand, deliver it to me and I will drop it off at my office the next day. Kind of solidifies the deal and gives a bit more comfort. And the last thing I would say is making sure that your offers are complete. I oftentimes, being on the listing side, I'll get offers from other agents where some fields are not completed or not all the relevant schedules are attached, which then means that I have to engage in another form of communication in order to get something back to make sure that I have a full and complete offer. So as a seller, I'm not inclined or wanting to do that, because by the time that I'm having this back and forth conversation with the other agent, their buyers may get cold feet, or they may think that they paid more for the property than they should have, and now, perhaps wanting to back out of the deal. So I would make sure that when you're working with your agent to, perhaps once the offer is complete, get the offer back, skim through it, make sure everything is completed. And essentially the reason why I wanted to put this out there is because a lot of people are, of course, right now competing and offering on properties. You don't want to be losing out on an offer because of things that that should be done. So I think the idea here is that you should be aware of what you need to do, and you should also hold the person accountable that's doing the work for you to make sure that these are done as well.
Absolutely.
The other thing I wanted to talk about was the purchase price. So oftentimes, in markets like this, well, it's a seller's market, you oftentimes submit one offer and then you have the ability to increase your offer. Oftentimes, a lot of people, what I'm finding is that they're having a hard time justifying that 50K or that 100K increase in purchase price. And I think a lot of people have a hard time really breaking the numbers down down to what that means, what that 50K means if it was to be amortized over a 30-year period, for example. So, I've done this exercise with my clients, and I've helped them understand what a 50K increase means for your monthly mortgage commitments, and to see if they're making that increase in price. So what I've done here is I've taken us through let's say a purchase of a property that's worth $750,000, putting a 20% down payment, $150,000 for down payment. Your monthly mortgage expense would be around $2,216. Now, if we had the opportunity to improve our offer, and let's say the winning number was $800,000, I need my clients to understand that improving to $800,000 would increase our mortgage by approximately $147 a month. Now, $147 a month is a lot easier to understand and grasp, when trying to make a decision under a short period of time. But I think seeing this really allows them to say, one, can we afford it on a monthly basis? And two, if we really love the house, is it worth paying an additional $150 a month for this?
Yeah, having that context is really critical when thinking about these things, because obviously in the heat of the moment, emotions and adrenaline's running high, and it can be easy to overreact or underreact. And let's just really focus on the numbers and facts.
Yes, exactly. The other cool thing that I wanted to quickly touch on is that I came across this data of
interesting
keywords searched on realtor.ca. And Matt, if we take a look at this list, there's a lot of words that stand out to us as real estate investors. So bungalow, in-law suite, basement suite, walkout basement, finished basement. So it tells me that a lot of investors are browsing the MLS and interested in finding these properties. I thought it was cool. I thought I'd share it.
Yeah, I've never actually seen that before, but to see that essentially from my perspective, 6 of the top 10 keywords all relate to getting essentially a secondary suite, it appears in your property, right? Basement suite, very obvious. In-law suite, very obvious. Finished basement goes a little bit more vague, but I would argue the reason they're probably looking for that is for a suite. Walkout basement, that sounds like a suite to me. Suite, that's definitely a suite. And bungalow is one of the easiest types of builds to be able to convert and add that in-law or granny basement suite.
And the other one, waterfront properties. No shocker there, eh?
Yeah. People are either looking for a mortgage helper, or they're looking to maybe get out of the city, it seems like.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I thought this list was pretty cool. And I've monitored this list over different months, and I would say that the consistent factor, Matt, is always keywords that have to do with the investment property. So the basements, the in-law suites, sometimes you see separate entrance as well. I'm surprised it's not on here, but hey, a lot of these things point to the fact that the properties that people are looking at probably has a separate entrance as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so this is the news about the garden suites that was published on August 9th, 2021. And essentially official plans and zoning bylaws review to permit multiple additional suites in homes, writes the mayor. In this they're referring to the Bill 108, the More Home, More Choice Act, where they're talking about the concept of bringing in garden suites to your existing property. And yeah, there's been good news and good noise coming out of the Clarington area, which, as I mentioned, is just east of us here in Oshawa. And essentially they're taking the approach that, look, there is a problem of supply, and one of the easiest and fastest ways to deal with supply is to create additional housing. And one way to do that is to allow existing homeowners to tap into their land and turn their land into something that's more user friendly and give the land the highest and best use of it. So I know that a lot of us got mail from the city kind of saying that this is what we're thinking of doing, and there's webinars coming up. If you're interested, join the webinar. And yeah, it was a lot of positive feedback from the investor side of the community. But then of course you're going to get some pushback from neighbors who are saying, I guess the not in my backyard people saying, we don't want this in our neighborhood. So I say that this is likely going to be happening. You know, for me, for a mayor to make a public statement is a
Yeah.
fairly strong statement to make. And what's encouraging about the statement being made is that this is now public and other regions are aware that Clarington is perhaps going to be a forerunner in this type of dwelling units. And, you know, they want, other cities would want to tap into it as well. There's a lot of tax revenue to be generated from this. So I would expect other regions to follow suit and follow what's happening in Clarington. And I know that when I meet with my inspectors at my properties, I do bring this up, and you know, they're very hush hush about what they can say, but the fact that they're not saying much tells me that it's in fact being discussed, and you know, news should be coming out sooner than later.
Yeah, that's definitely exciting for Clarington and hopefully for the general area, as hopefully other municipalities and cities will also adopt it. And so I guess just kind of talking through high level, we don't have the guidance yet in regards to the details here, but I imagine that with time, assuming this passes, you'll start to see, you know, larger lots attracting an even greater premium, right? As people look to maybe add garden suites or things of that nature. You know, properties that already have large garages or like back sheds or any sort of even like laneway roads where you've got additional parking, things of that nature will all start to become even more attractive to investors looking for those value add plays.
Absolutely. I would say, and I would, you know, strongly encourage people to work with realtors or investor focused realtors who know the area, who know the different bylaws that come into play when we're talking about any type of suite, whether it's a secondary suite or a garden suite, because, you know, oftentimes, you know, I have seen people working with quote unquote investor focused realtors where they're still missing some key details that are required when making the purchase. So one of the biggest things that you can get burnt on in the Durham region is that you need to be very well aware of where the flood lines are and where the environmental regulations and limits are. Because if your property sits on a floodplain, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be on it. If it's within the area and you're on a floodplain, unfortunately, you cannot change the use of that property. So the highest and best use of that property is what you've purchased it at, and that's it, right? Whereas typically what we like to do is we like to get in the garden suite. We like to talk about discussing having the ADU and perhaps expanding the ADU in a future point in time, but you got to make sure you buy the right property. So when I'm talking with my clients, of course, this is in conversation. So some of the things we're looking at is minimum 5,000 square foot lots, you know, properties that, like you mentioned, that either have the garage or a laneway straight to the back of the property. Again, nothing is written. I'm just speculating based on what's happening in Barrie and some of the other areas.
Yeah, really appreciate you sharing those insights.
Awesome. And the last thing I wanted to talk about, I know a lot of people in the Durham region are looking at pre-construction properties as well, mainly due to that Pickering Casino that we talked about the last week. Casino is up and running, and this Universal City development is a development that's very close to the casino. And a lot of investors are thinking of buying units here to be able to, you know, perhaps have it on Airbnb as an option for people to use when they're making the trip down to into the Pickering Casino. You know, they're trying to create this nice environment where if you're a resident of the condo, you know, you have a co-work space where if you're working from home and you need a space to work, you can definitely jump into this lounge and have and do your work. They have the concept of outdoor play as well. So here you see the display of an outdoor pool, which is fairly common now. And yeah, essentially the whole idea is that it's going to be very close to the Pickering Casino, and it's going to provide people an opportunity to have a unit that, you know, potentially people coming in for the weekend will have an area to stay in. So I know that the Universal City project has been very exciting and it's created a lot of buzz, and I've been getting a lot of questions on it as well. So I thought I'd just leave it here in case anyone is interested in this project and has more questions. They can definitely reach out to me.
Yeah, appreciate you sharing that. I guess just high level, do you see some interesting opportunities for people that are looking to jump into the Pickering Oshawa market with like this UCE?
Yeah, so I would say that what's the way I justify it, Matt, to people is that when we look at pre-construction, oftentimes the metric that you measure, whether this is a good purchase or not, is per square foot, what the cost is per square foot for you to purchase a condo. And I kind of make that comparison to different areas within the GTA. So, right now in Pickering, to purchase, you're around $800 to $900 a square foot. And they're starting in the mid to high 400s for one bedroom units. That type of dwelling in downtown is around $1,000 to $1,200 per square foot. So, you can argue that yes, there is still a bit of a room here to make money. And would I expect prices to increase? Yes, I would expect there to be a bit of a price appreciation as this whole complex develops, because it's going to be a high attraction for people wanting to get out of the city, or even right now, I find like the notion of what people want to do in the GTA is if they have to go away for, let's say, a bachelor party, and you want to do it within Canada, within Ontario, you're going to Montreal because it's party town, it's party city. So I can see the Pickering Casino kind of having the same kind of effect for everyone in the Montreal, Ottawa area, where they want that casino, that downtown, that Toronto experience. Come east, enjoy this, and then from Pickering to downtown is a 20 to 25-minute GO train ride. So I can see this having a lot of pull when it comes to bringing people into the area. In terms of other development, I would say there is cool opportunities coming to the Durham region with, again, high-rise to mid-rise condos. Now, from an investment strategy, I've looked at, I'd say, well over 100 projects. And, realistically, from a numbers perspective and a cash flow perspective, it doesn't make sense. But a lot of people getting into them are getting into them because of the appreciation play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that perspective and just insight to what's going on in the local market. As always, you're just a wealth of knowledge. For anyone that wants to reach out, that's thinking about investing in Durham, Oshawa, or anywhere in that region, really encourage you guys, do reach out. Link in the video description down below. And it's so important that you reach out before you feel like you need to, right? I come across so many aspiring investors that they wait until they see the one property that they desperately want. They call a random realtor up that day and they're like, hey man, I need to go see this, It's so much easier if you already have a pre-existing relationship with your realtor, right? Build up some familiarity, make sure that you guys work well together. And then that way, when the right property or opportunity does come across your plate, you can pull the trigger and move fast. So this is one of those things, especially in a hot market like Oshawa, or realistically almost any Canadian real estate market these days, you need to have those dominoes lined up in advance. One, just for your own personal sanity, but as well, two, if you actually want to get the deal, that's the fastest way to do it. Just make sure you've got the right people on your power team. Again, really appreciate you sharing all your perspectives and insights on what's going on in Oshawa.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Yeah, and if anyone wants to connect, I'm definitely accessible through all my contact information in the show notes, but otherwise you can find me on Instagram at Saman Habibi _real estate. I'm active on there, so people are DMing me, I'm DMing back, we're connecting through coffees. So anything works for me.
Awesome. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you very much.